Welcome back. Well, today I am joined by Congresswoman Katie Porter. And, she hasn't been with us for quite some time. So we'd like to welcome her to the show. Well, Katie, so nice to see you.
Thank you so much for having me again.
You're welcome. Now, there's been a lot of things that have been going on, and I know you are always very focused on our senior community, and we certainly appreciate all the things that you do for them. And let's just kind of go over some of the things that you've been working on. So, for instance, you've got something called Protect Our Care. What does that mean?
Protect Our Care is a national organization that is traveling around the country to talk about how important healthcare is to everyday Americans. Mm-hmm. And we all know that we want our care to be high quality, to deliver the life-saving cures and treatments and wellness that we need, but we also need to be able to afford it. And so what Protect Our Care does is advocate for things like making sure that the Affordable Care Act continues to be law. We just saw that 2.8 million Americans signed up to get health care through the Affordable Care Act in the last few weeks during the most recent open enrollment period. And they also do a lot of work, and this was really the focus of the event that I had at the Tustin Senior Center, on making sure that prescription drugs are affordable. And this is a huge issue for Americans of all ages, but particularly senior Americans who are more likely to take medication and to take more medications. And so Protect Our Care is really about making sure that we're doing the work in Congress of allowing Medicare and insurance companies to negotiate those drug prices so that medicines are actually being taken by seniors. They can afford them. We're not seeing people do things like go without or cut pills in half because they simply can't afford to take the medicine that their healthcare provider has prescribed.
There was a time, and I don't know if people are still doing this, but, we couldn't get anything here in our country. So we would have to go out of our country, like to Canada, because they were so expensive here. Is that still happening?
We absolutely pay some of the highest drug costs in the world for the exact same drugs as in other places. There are still people who go over the border into Mexico, for example, to get drug prices. And so one of the things that we're looking at in Congress is, as we think about letting Medicare do that drug price negotiation, making sure that we in the United States are not paying more than the international benchmark for the exact same drug. And one of the most important things for people to understand is that we as taxpayers fund most of the research and development. The groundbreaking drugs, these life-saving COVID-19 vaccines, they are built on the backs of taxpayer investment in research at NIH, through grants to universities like UC Irvine and other places. So what we're asking for is for the drug companies to simply negotiate prices just like any other kind of business. And I think one thing people should know is the ban, the prohibition on Medicare being able to negotiate drug prices was a late night, dark of the night, many years ago, giveaway to big pharma. And in every other aspect of our economy, we have that competition, we have that price negotiation, we ought to have it for prescription drugs.
Now, when you talk about prescription drugs, I recently was interviewing Kaiser Permanente, and we were talking to one of their pharmacists, and we talked a lot about generic drugs. So when we talk about the expense, is it for generics as well as the main brand?
The biggest problem with affordability is around the non-generics. But part of this does relate to patent protection and the ways in which drug companies can make a very, very tiny minor change to a drug and then secure longer patent protection. There are deals called pay to delay. There are effectively agreements that try to get companies to put off that generic manufacturing. And so what we've seen here is big pharma companies really manipulate the market in their favor. We often hear from pharmaceutical companies that they need to charge so much so that they can pay for research and development. I think it's really important that people know what this is. It's just a lie. Research and development is not even close to the largest expense of pharmaceutical companies. In fact, they spend more on stock buybacks and dividends for their shareholders than they spend on research and development. So what we're seeing here is really a case of big pharma putting profits before people.
Wow. Well, that's kind of scary because, we rely on these companies to provide us with medication.
No, absolutely. And look, every American is affected, not just seniors. One of the fastest growing, sort of most rapidly growing price drugs is insulin, which affects diabetics, EpiPens, different kinds of cancer treatments. And so what we're trying to do is make sure not only do we have those life-saving treatments, but that people can afford to get them as well. And we have to get healthcare costs under control if we're going to be able to continue to deliver that high quality care to all Americans, including all seniors through the Medicare program.
Well, exactly. And our communities are not getting any younger. In fact, we're going to have so many more people over the age of 65, over the next 10, 20 years. So hopefully you can get this worked out as soon as possible, because like I said, we're not getting any younger.
Well, one of the things that we're proposing to do with some of these savings from allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices is to actually reinvest those savings back in our seniors by expanding Medicare. And there are two primary ways that we're talking about expanding Medicare, and I support both of them. One of them is lowering the Medicare eligibility age from 65 to, say, 62 or even 60. And we know that this would save lives. Cancer diagnoses jump at age 65. There's a huge spike compared to age 64, 63. Why? Because people are putting off diagnostic tests. They're putting off things like mammograms and colonoscopies and other kinds of screenings because they're too expensive under their private insurance. And when they get Medicare, they get those tests only to find out that they've had cancer, which could have been stopped and better fought if we had better health care for seniors earlier in their lives. So we're trying to lower the age of Medicare eligibility. The second way that we're going to use those drug price negotiation savings to reinvest in Medicare is to expand Medicare to cover dental, vision, and hearing. Yeah. Now, most Americans like Medicare. People wait and they're excited to get on it. It's a good health insurance program, and it delivers the best quality health care at the lowest price point of any of the alternatives. But not having dental, not having vision, not having hearing create a huge problem for our seniors who often can't afford to get these treatments and get these kinds of care, and it affects their health. And so if we want to keep seniors happy and healthy, living independently, enjoying their lives as long as possible, then we need to treat dental and vision and hearing as what they are, which is healthcare issues covered by our senior healthcare program, Medicare.
So in order to be able to expand it, please tell me again how you would fund it. It was through savings. What was that again?
Right. So Medicare right now is, as we talked about, prohibited from negotiating drug prices.
Okay.
They have to pay whatever price, no matter how exorbitant, a drug company charges, or else they have to not cover the drug. And we obviously want to cover as many of these drugs as we can. So by allowing Medicare to negotiate drug prices and saying to the drug company, if you don't negotiate, we have the ability to benchmark it to an international price. We have the ability to give a license to another company to compete with you who will negotiate. We will save hundreds of billions of dollars. And it's doesn't even take all of that money. Part of that money will be enough to fund that lowering Medicare eligibility age and dental and vision and hearing benefits for seniors.
Thank you for clarifying that, because I think sometimes when we watch the news, we don't hear the little details about, how it will benefit somebody. All we hear is kind of the overview of, this is what they want to do, this is what they want to spend, but we don't hear the actual value of doing that. So thank you for clarifying.
Well, and Lisa, it's a great point, because one of the things we often talk about is this is how much we're going to invest. This is how much we're going to change. We often don't talk about what are the costs of not doing something. Yeah. So if we don't make these changes, seniors will go without prescriptions. If we don't make these changes, seniors will go blind without access to different kinds of vision care, for instance, that could save their sight or preserve their sight. So there's a lot of expense to not acting as well. And when we talk about the Build Back Better budget that Congress is currently negotiating, one of the most important things for people to know is that the vast majority of that spending is paid for by raising revenues. So we have to, just like American families and seniors have to look at their Social Security checks, look at their retirement income, and balance that against their expenses, Congress has to do the exact same thing. And so when you hear talk about a spending bill of X dollars, know that what you're often not hearing about, make sure you ask the follow-up question, how much of that is paid for? And we're working to pay for as much of it as we can.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Thank you. So now in terms of, spending and not spending, you have to have some budget. discussions. So tell me a little bit about your budget reconciliation.
Yep. So where we are in the process is in August, the Senate passed a bipartisan infrastructure bill and sent that over to the House. So the House actually passed our infrastructure bill first. We sent it to the Senate. They took it apart, took some things out, put it back together and sent it back to us as the bipartisan infrastructure deal. That is one part of President Biden's Build Back Better agenda. But we recognize that what we need to invest in, what we need to build back better is not just roads and ports and bridges, but it's also our workers and our workforce and our healthcare system and our economy generally. The goal here is really to create a strong, stable, globally competitive economy. And that benefits every American, including retired Americans. So we're looking at making investments that would do exactly that. That includes things like making 2 years of community college free, which will be a huge help for people who are overwhelmed by college costs. We're looking at things like investing in wildfire prevention and green energy technology, coastal resilience programs, conservation and preservation of lands. And one of my particular things that I'm advocating for, a big investment in childcare to help make sure that men and women can return to the workforce.
Now, that what has been a real issue is the cost of childcare. I mean, we have many people in our office who are struggling to try and find childcare, like there's lack of it. Therefore, the costs of those that are available are very expensive. What do you think you can do about that?
Well, so we need to make sure that we are making childcare easier to pay for American families so that every family can make their own choice about what balance of returning to the workforce and being home with children is right for them. If we don't do this, we're going to continue to see some labor shortages, and that's going to really hold back our economy. Right now, women's workforce participation in the United States is at a 30-year low. And that's a major contributor to why we're seeing those help wanted signs. So what we propose to do is to make sure that no American family has to pay more than 7% of its income on childcare. And we know that childcare is overwhelming California families and American families. Even before the pandemic, in a survey of California families, childcare was named the most unaffordable, biggest expense that families were facing, even more than housing. And that's no surprise when you hear the statistics. In 32 states, including in California, the cost of childcare for 1 year is more than 1 year of in-state tuition. I experienced this myself. My daughter, Betsy, went to UC Irvine's preschool. It cost more for her year of preschool than it would have been for her to be an undergraduate at UC Irvine for that same year.
Yikes. People can't afford that. That's crazy.
Well, not only can parents not afford it, but what it does is actually it also has downstream and down generation and up generation effects. So we often see grandparents being asked to care for children, sometimes beyond what they're physically able to do because their sons or daughters, family members just can't afford it. And we see children who get left behind. Some children get quality childcare, some kids don't. And that's so childcare is an investment in our entire economy. Even if you're long past having children, you're enjoying grandchildren, or you're glad to not have any for a while, we all benefit from that strong, stable, growing economy. Wherever you are in your life, whether you have kids or don't, whether you have grandkids or don't, childcare should matter to you if you care about having an economy that is thriving.
Exactly. And especially get the women back in the workplace, because we definitely don't want to see that happening going forward. So excellent. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing the information.
Absolutely. And I'll be back as soon as we get that budget passed to talk more about exactly these investments. I would love to talk with people, particularly about the work that we're doing around wildfires. And I encourage everyone to please watch the wildfire preparation town hall that we have. It's available. You can watch it and rewatch it. Some great information from the Orange County Fire Authority about how to be prepared for wildfires.
Excellent, Katie. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you so much.
And we'll be right back after this.